Ladies and gentlemen with media, good afternoon. Thank you for being here this afternoon. This is the first of many press briefings to come. As a reminder, this forum is twofold. It provides an opportunity for me to inform you of the work of my government, and it also provides an opportunity for us to have discourse about the work of the government. As you know, I recently returned from Barbados and Canada attending two important conferences. This afternoon, I want to share some information with you about BVI's presence at the 36th regular meeting with the Conference of CARICOM Heads of Government in Barbados and the International Economic Forum of the Americas in Toronto, Canada. I'll speak first about my trip to Barbados. During the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting, I had the opportunity to be updated on many of the pressing issues affecting our region. Among the issues discussed were the establishment of the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and the creation of the Caribbean Energy Fund. This Caribbean Center would serve as an implementation hub for sustainable energy efficiency activities and projects in the region. It will be used to channel and coordinate efforts to assist economies with transitioning from fossil fuel to renewable energy. The Energy Fund, on the other hand, is designed to support the transformation of the Caribbean community's energy sector away from fossil fuel. Additionally, the forum provided an opportunity for heads of government to exchange views with the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, as the United Nations prepares to launch a new global development agenda focused on sustainable development in September. This agenda is important for the territory as the Sustainable Development Goals will highlight the challenges of small island developing states in addressing the social development needs and their ability to build economic and environmental resilience as key elements to sustainable development for small island developing states such as the BVI. The BVI also used the opportunity to discuss with Caribbean leaders the decision taken by the European Commission to place a number of Caribbean countries on a list of non-cooperative tax jurisdictions. Heads of government agreed that this decision was done without merit and was done outside of the internationally agreed body empowered to set international standards on tax cooperation. CARICOM heads of government have called on the European Union to withdraw the listing. The conference also discussed the role of Caribbean universities in building resilience and wealth creation to support Caribbean development. The new Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Sir Hilary Beckles, in a presentation to head of government, outlined the work being done at UWI and other Caribbean universities to put greater emphasis on science and technology for the purpose of fostering greater industry and academic linkages. This is being done in an effort to strengthen the region's indigenous capacity to foster innovation, competitiveness, and resilience within the Caribbean workforce. As a part of this strategy, greater emphasis will also be placed on promoting greater networking among Caribbean universities and tertiary education institutions internationally. About my trip to Toronto, Canada. Between July 8 and 10, I attended the International Economic Forum of the Americas, Toronto Global Forum, after having accepted an invitation from conference organizers to be part of a panel of Caribbean leaders. We discussed the challenges facing the Caribbean community in having a shared vision for the Caribbean. The Toronto Global Forum is a non-profit organization fostering dialogue on national and global issues. It is held under the auspices of the International Economic Forum of the Americas. IEFA organizes annual summits bringing together heads of states, central bank governors, ministers, and global economic decision makers. The forum attracted over 2,000 participants and 80 speakers, being held under the theme Creating Opportunities in a Connected World. I shared this panel with the Prime Minister of Grenada, Dr. Honorable Keith Mitchell, the Premier of Bermuda, Honorable Michael Dunkley, and the Premier of Aruba, Honorable Michael Eman, and the Secretary for Economic Development in Puerto Rico, Mr. Alberto We had an encouraging dialogue discussing the Caribbean's role in economic development of the Americas in light of the deepening relationships between the United States and Cuba. We discussed various issues in relation to tourism, air travel, self-sustainability, and renewable energy. I was especially pleased to realize that as the small Caribbean territories, our concerns were essentially the same, and we all recognized the need to work together towards a common goal and to integrate with the outside world in a meaningful way. I was especially interested in this relationship to the effect that this would have in relation to two of our major Puerto Rico-based banks doing business in the BVI and their ability to continue to serve the people of this territory into the foreseeable future. Aside from this panel discussion, I was able to attend quite a few discussions that range from international banking and finance to the information technology and telecommunications. These discussions cemented in my mind the need for this government to continue to push for significant advancement in policies that facilitate the improvement of our capability and use of information technology and communications. The discussion also cemented the utilization of the cosmopolitan nature of our society to facilitate a strong and vibrant economy to improve the standard of living for citizens here in the British Virgin Islands. Pursuant to these discussions, I also held several bilateral meetings with several interested with a view to providing opportunities for better regional cooperation and the provision for economic opportunities for the British Virgin Islands economy. Finally, I was able to meet and share a memorable evening with our BVI athletes who would be representing us in the Pan American Games, as well as being present for the opening of the Games themselves on Friday, the 10th of July. I was very pleased to have been able to participate in these events and found that the information received and relationships forged as having tremendous potential benefit to this territory. As a government, we will continue to do what is necessary to strengthen and build our international relationships so that the Virgin Islands can further enhance its position in the regional and global economy. And I welcome your questions.
Good afternoon, Premier. Malika McPherson from the Island Sun newspaper. In relation to your mention of discussions regarding the EU blacklisting, what you said that they're going to be lobbying to make sure that there's some amendment. I would assume that's what you meant. Is that going to be in the form of a letter, or are you going to be hoping to have some sort of a discussion? And also, is there anything further? Have you heard anything else since that list became public? Because I know at least one jurisdiction that was affected, they were able to get in contact with one of the countries responsible for that and got some sort of an amendment, or got them to acknowledge the fact that they were somewhat hasty. Any word since?
What has happened is that the discussion centered around the fact that the list was not accurate. It contained information which was old and not updated, and therefore the CARICOM community decided to ask that the list be withdrawn. The same thing here occurred because we in the BVI also issued a statement to the same effect. We have had no communication as yet with individual countries, but we made a specific statement about the list and asked that it would be withdrawn as well.
Just a follow-up. Some of the countries in the region that are affected, or by being on that list, they noted that they do the least amount of business with some of the countries that would have been responsible for the compilation of the list. Is the same with the BVI?
The countries in the Caribbean which are involved in financial services, all countries have some form of financial services sector. Some are more involved than others. Countries like the BVI, Cayman, and Bermuda are perhaps more heavily involved and would therefore be more concerned about having this list be withdrawn.
Hey, good afternoon, Premier. Ken Silva with the Beacon newspaper. I was hoping to talk a little bit about the duty-free bill that was recently passed. Was this something that was foreseen as being needed from the project's inception, or was it further along the line that said, hey, we need to do this?
The idea of the duty-free bill like this came to the House actually had to do with the project. Had to do with the project in that it was recognized that in order for this project to be really successful, as is the case in most other places where there are cruise ports, that the duty free should be brought into place.
So it's further along down the line that you realized this needed to happen, or just to be clear?
Could you repeat that?
Was it further along the line when the project was being, underway? Was that when you realized that it needed to be passed?
During the development of the project, this was one of the discussions that took place, and therefore it was seen that it was necessary to be
And
done.
if you don't mind, can you go a little bit into the process of like when you realized it needed to happen? Was this something that international companies asked you to do? Yeah.
This is something that was an idea that was developed, of course, through the Ports Authority and the project. And as I said before, it is something which obtains in fact, every ports project, every cruise port project with a cruise port shopping district, this obtains. And of course, it is also not necessarily confined to cruise ports. It is something which you find in many airports, many other seaports as well, and in many parts of various countries. For example, on the High Street in London.
Sure. That being said, and don't you think this should have been something that was foreseeable when the project started? That way, there could be more public input and, things like that.
I hear you. But when it was, as the project sort of developed, as we entertained and discussed more with international companies that would be involved, then it became more evident that would be something useful and necessary.
Melissa Edwards, BVI Platinum News. Honorable Premier, the UK has set a November deadline for OTs, including the BVI, to set a timeline for the establishment of central registries. How far is the BVI with that, and how serious are you about it?
The British Virgin Islands continues to have dialogue with the industry and with the United Kingdom on this matter. And we will continue to have this dialogue so we can arrive at some position before the November meeting.
So you're saying that there's ongoing discussion, no actual work has actually started by the BVI in terms of reaching that deadline? Well,
ongoing discussion is actual work because the discussion is taking place between the industry, the BVI government, and the United Kingdom government. Yeah.
I'm sure you've had discussion with other your counterpart OTs. What are they saying?
Many OTs are at different stages when it comes to the financial services sector. And for some OTs, it's not really an important part of their economy. In others, for example, Bermuda does have a central register.
Okay, you said in your, my second question, you said in your meeting in Toronto that you spoke about air travel. Can we get an update on the airport project? How soon can we see a contract agreement? And has government actually identified or confirmed a source of funding for that project?
The airport project is moving on. We have had submissions by the bodies who are interested in bidding. They have looked at it from a point of view of concession. They have looked at it from one point of view of building and financing. So they've looked at it from various points of view. This matter now is being looked at by a committee involving the Ministry of Finance, the Airport Development Authority. And as a matter of fact, right now, they're looking at that matter to consider which direction we will be going in finally, and then look towards the financing. For example, if the financing will be, if it's going to be built totally by the government of BVI, then we have to look at how to be financed. We have to do the projections for the business case so that we'll be able to determine whether it's affordable, of course. And then present our case to the British government, will have to agree with the financing of it. Yeah.
Okay, just one more before you do the follow-up. Has the H. Lavatista Community College been accredited? And if yes, why no official announcement from government?
It has been accredited. Yes. I cannot tell you why no official did matter at this moment, right? But it has been accredited. And I imagine a news release would have gone out.
How do you feel about it? Because I know it has been a long process and it's really a major achievement for the BVI.
It has been accredited. It was a major achievement. It is a major achievement. It was a long process. And I know that the public are informed. I cannot tell you at this moment when a news release went out or if it gone, because I don't see all the news releases. But okay. But the process is complete. It has been accredited, and it is actually something that's very good for the university, for the college. Yes.
Just to piggyback on the question about airlift that was mentioned by my colleague, last season, and I'll say that because we're at the end of the season, the government did make some strides. There was the VI Airlink agreement and the greeters. We're approaching another season, and airlift continues to be an issue for the territory. Any other plan? And would you elaborate on how you feel that all of the improvements that you put in place went? Are there going to be some strengthening or some basic discarding?
The things that we put in place last time are working well. The airlift in Antigua using BVI Airlink has been and continues to work well. Continue to be more and more waiting with a subscribe, and so that is working well. As far as the airport is concerned, as I said earlier, we've made great strides in that, and the meeting is taking place now. Will be a final determination in which direction we will go and how it will be completed.
And the greeters in St. Thomas?
The greeters in St. Thomas are in place. They're working. Matter of fact, when I returned from Toronto a few days ago, they were in place and doing their work, what was expected of them, in a good way.
And one other question on the tourism front. As the landside development continues, back in the 2003 administration of your government, there was a helipad that was constructed. It's along the same line, the route that's going to go connecting to the Queen Elizabeth II Park. What's the status of that helipad? And do you see that being incorporated in the entire project going along?
The helipad is, of course, still there and is still functioning, and it will continue to be used as necessary. We have not, as yet, discussed how it will function once that entire shoreline is complete, but that's some time down the road, and that determination will be made when it's appropriate.
Good afternoon again. I noticed that the motion to establish a register of interest committee was bumped off the last order paper. Why was that, and when can we expect that to be formed, that committee? Thanks.
It should be back on the other paper at the next meeting of the House. Reason why it was removed at that time was because there were some changes in the legislation, actually Register of Interest Act, which needed to be made.
Good afternoon, Premier. Johan Earl Vino. 3 questions. What's your view on the current impasse between the 2 members of the opposition with regards to the leader of the opposition's position? We've had 2 sittings of the House of Assembly so far. We've seen the formation of the Public Accounts Committee, and that is usually chaired by, I think, dictated by the Constitution, that is chaired by the leader of the opposition, and we have none as yet. So what's your view on the impasse? That's one.
Sure. My view on impasse is that it will resolve itself. The 2 members of the opposition, I'm sure, will come to an agreement as to who shall be the leader of the opposition. And once that is done, the person who is appointed or decided to be leader of the opposition will become the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee.
Second question is, when would you be able to present audited financial reports to the House of Assembly?
As I said a few months ago, several of the audit reports were sent to the House of Assembly to return to the chief auditor and then to the House of Assembly. I think that was for 2010 and 2011. That has been worked on and should be presented within the first, certainly by the end of the second quarter of this year.
Okay, and lastly, what are your thoughts on gay marriage? We've seen right next door in the U.S. Virgin Islands, the governor making steps to make sure that it can happen there, as dictated by the U.S. Supreme Court. What are your thoughts on gay marriage in the BVI?
The present posture of the BVI as far as gay marriage is concerned is that we recognize marriage as marriage between a man and a woman. If that will ever change, that will change the result of discussion within the community and eventually discussion in the House of Assembly. But that is the position at the moment, yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Gary Eliezer, BVI News. A quick follow-up on the impasse with the opposition. There are some suggestions that maybe changing or amending the legislative framework in place going forward to avoid a reoccurrence. Could you give us your thoughts on that? And on the CARICOM support, what, if any, optimism is there that CARICOM's support carries with it any kind of a clout with the EU?
As far as you say, impasse between the members of the opposition, what usually happens is that the party to which the members belong, whichever party belongs to, they would select a leader for that party. And usually it would be the leader who is selected who will become the premier of the British Virgin Islands, right? The party has selected a leader, and there's some discussion about whether they want to have further discussion, but that is something that they will have to determine. In the event that the party or the members who are elected are not able to agree on who should be leader, then the governor will have to make a determination. And I think he did make a statement. I don't remember exactly what day, but he did say he would give a month and a day for the party or for the members to decide between themselves who will be leader. CARICOM. The voice of CARICOM, I think, is important on the world stage, right? And I know that I've spoken to, for example, the OECS and also the CARICOM leaders who have spoken with, for example, the president of France on this matter before. Right? And I know that other countries, France, the United Kingdom, Canada, United States, are also observers at CARICOM meetings and therefore able to hear and carry back to their countries the concerns of CARICOM. CARICOM, of course, member countries also represented at the United Nations and have a voice there. So the voice of CARICOM is an important voice in the world community.
Premier Smith, is your government aware of any plans or ongoing negotiations to sell Bywater? BVI, Bywater BVI.
There was, at one point, we did meet with a group of people who were interested.
And who are they?
I can't tell you the name of them at the moment.
Okay, so those negotiations are ongoing. What's this?
I have had no report from the people themselves about the negotiations.
How long ago
no
was
further
this?
report. This is, I can't tell you the date, but that would have been several weeks ago, yes.
Several weeks ago.
Yes,
So
yes.
companies have shown interest
Exactly,
in
yes.
buying Bywater. Foreign, local? Since you can't be specific.
No,
Foreign, local?
not local, no.
Foreign, okay.
Just to follow up on Ms. Francis' question. Would you be able to say what led government to the discussion table with these persons who you cannot name at the moment?
Not led government, what led the company? Not government, okay.
My last question. When at the swearing-in of government of your cabinet, you had indicated that you intend to set up a minister of state, a junior minister system. Have you actually started discussion with the governor in terms of the constitution to facilitate that?
Yeah, discussions have begun and are ongoing about that matter. Yes.
Okay, any timeline, and have you actually identified any area you're looking at, tourism, education?
No, what we're doing is basically establishing the fact that the positions can be established, and this is the discussion we're having at this moment. Yeah.
We have time for one more.
Final question, Premier. You mentioned that in Canada you had some telecommunications related discussions. Would you be able to say how that might be able to tie in terms of assisting or helping the systems here, since there are many concerns?
The discussion in Canada had a lot to do with trade, international trade, both for Canada and the Caribbean and in the North American region. And discussing the importance of infrastructure and towards international trade. There's no suggestion as how it would help the BVI at this point, but the discussion was enlightening because it showed how various countries are dealing with the matter and how important it is to trade for those territories. Good. And thank you very much.